I'm going to call to order working group. Thank you all for joining today in my capacity as chair of the LCC.
Recording in progress.
I am convening this work group, but will not be participating in it after today. To begin with, maybe we could do a round of introductions, and I'll start at the left and kind of work my way around the committee table. So we'll start with Mr. Dahl.
Thank you very much. I am Eric Cedarleaf Dahl, the Executive Secretary of the Capital Area Architecture and Planning Board.
And I was going to start at the left, and then the mayor is now seated to your left. So we'll let her situate herself first and go to Mr. Meyer, and then we'll come back to the mayor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bob Meyer, Assistant Commissioner, Department of Natural Resources.
Mayor Herr.
Good morning, everyone. Kali Herr, Mayor St. Paul.
Jesse Held, Assistant Commissioner for the Department of Administration.
Representative Isaac Schultz, member of the House, and serve also on the CAP board.
Senator Steve Green.
Senator John Hoffman.
Representative Peter Fisher.
Representative Jenny Cleavorn. I almost forgot my name.
It's right there.
I'm Representative Jim Nash, and apparently I'm sitting on the wrong side of the table, so I might migrate over next to Isaac.
No.
Okay, I'll stay here.
I'm Kent Whitworth, Director and CEO of the Minnesota Historical Society.
Hi, Britton House. I'm the Assistant Chief of Staff for Policy and Legislative Affairs in the Governor's Office, and former House staff and former Hortman staff.
And then we have some members participating remotely.
Senator Andrew Lang, thanks for allowing me to participate remotely.
Good afternoon, Senator Amanda Hemmingson-Yager. Thanks as well.
And then in addition to the members, we have staff. Mr. Turman, if you want to introduce yourself.
My name is Austin Turman. I'm a research analyst with the LCC, serving the group in a nonpartisan role in a research capacity.
Next, we'll turn to Mr. Turman to discuss the enabling legislation of this work group.
Thank you, Chair and members. In your packets, you should see a printout of the enabling legislation. Subdivision 1 is the membership, which is all of you. Sub D2 is the charges. So this group must make recommendations for the creation of the Melissa and Mark Hortman Memorial State Park within the capital area as defined in statute. This would include identifying the roles and responsibilities of the Commissioner of Administration and Natural Resources, the Minnesota Historical Society, and the Capital Area Architectural Planning Board related to the administration of the park, including assigning the roles and responsibilities for providing educational programming, interpretive services, planning processes for physical changes, and public engagement activities within the park, as well as funding recommendations for establishing and maintaining the park and related programming. Moving down to Sub D6, the work of the group will culminate and finish with a report that would be due on February 1st of next year. This report will go to the chairs and ranking minority members of the committees with primary jurisdiction over the Department of Administration and Department of Natural Resources, and that would include any draft legislation if needed. And then I want to also mention briefly regarding open meeting law. This group would be under the legislative open meeting law, which defines a meeting as when a quorum is present and when action is taken regarding a matter within the jurisdiction of the body. This allows for people meeting remotely. They would be also counted towards quorum. So with this group, there's 14 members. A quorum would be 8 members. So for instance, if the group were to establish a subcommittee, that rule would also apply to that. And then that's it. That's my notes. If you have any questions regarding the enabling legislation or the open meeting law, I'd be happy to answer them now or at a later date. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Turman? I'll just add more about the genesis of this. Of course, we know that Mark and Melissa Hortman were assassinated in their home last summer on June 14th. Prior to that, many folks here will know that Speaker Hortman had a great love for the Capitol building and the Capitol campus. On long sessions, she was known to walk the grounds. If you joined her, she would share her opinions, both positive and negative, about the way the grounds were kept and what trees were there in particular. She had a very strong feeling about the trees. But Melissa had a vision for this place. She wanted to ensure that it was as accessible as possible to the public, and that the public would have the ability to understand and appreciate its history as much as she did. And so she wanted to see this entire area turn into a state park in recognition of the fantastic work that our state does with our state park system. And it was a long-term ambition of hers with the goal of making this area even more open, accessible, and understanding to the people of Minnesota. And in the aftermath of her and Mark's assassination, several of us thought it would be a great way to preserve that legacy, to call together a group and have discussions about whether that idea was workable and how it could work and how we could best bring it to life. And that's the purpose of the legislation and the purpose of this work group. At this time, we're going to elect a chair and then a vice chair, and then follow those two elections. I will hand the gavel over to the new chair and leave you all to your work. So at this time, I'll open the floor for nominations for chair of the work group. Representative Cleavorn.
Thank you. I nominate Peter Fisher.
Representative Fisher's name is in nomination. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Seeing no other nominations, we'll close nominations. Mr. Chairman, do we need to do a roll call for this, or can we can do a voice vote? Okay. All in favor of Representative Fisher serving as chair of the work group, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion prevails. Congratulations, Representative Fisher. I will now open the floor for nominations for vice chair of the work group. Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to nominate Senator John Hoffman.
Senator Hoffman's name has been placed in a nomination. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Seeing no nominations, I'll close nominations. All those in favor of electing Senator Hoffman as vice chair of the work group, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion prevails, and Senator Hoffman has been elected vice chair of the work group. Congratulations to Senator Hoffman. And with that, Representative Fisher, I will hand the gavel over to you and leave you all to do your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leader Stevenson. Thank you, Senator Hoffman. Thank you, everybody. We have lots of great work that we're going to get to do over the coming few months here. I will say that the next time we first of all have on the agenda is determining dates and times and frequency of the meeting. I know that we've got quite a bit of work out there that we'd like to get done. We've got a report that's going to be due for the next legislative session. And so what I'd like to do is toss out a suggestion for what might be an idea for planning as we go forward is maybe right now plan that maybe like once every 3 weeks we should be getting together so that we can keep the work going along. And if we find out that it's not enough time, we might meet more frequently. And if we're moving along well, then we get done early and then we can get back to the other chores that we have before us. So just want to kind of toss that out. I know that right now we are meeting on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock. Does that kind of work? And I'm also open to other thoughts or ideas if people would like to have any comments on that. Anyone care to make do we need to have a motion on that? Representative Claiborne.
Thank you. I move that we continue to meet on Wednesdays at 1 p.m.
And that would be, for clarification, would that be every third Wednesday?
Every third Wednesday until if we see that it needs to be amended.
Okay. Representative Nash.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that as we do that, the online version of this meeting will still be offered because some folks live more than a considerable distance away from the Capitol, and just wanted to make sure that that was a possibility.
Yes, as I look at staff here, as we did for this one, that we would continue to do that for all of them going forward. Other questions or comments? We have a motion before us that we meet the.
Excuse me, Chair.
Excuse me. Oh, yes. Thank you, Senator Hemmingson Yeager.
Apologies for the interruption. We can talk about this if it's just a me thing, no big deal. But as I was flipping through my calendar, I also serve on the Tax Expenditures Review Commission, which meets on Wednesdays from noon to 1:30. And there might be a couple Wednesdays where I would be double booked. So if that's just a one-off thing that we can discuss offline, totally fine. But I wanted to bring it up just in case.
Okay, thank you, Senator Hemmingson Yeager, for bringing that up. I think ours will be every third, so it's possible that they may cross, and we can take a look at that as we go forward. I think one of the things that may help is because we're remote, that we'll be able to have the remote option. That may make it a little bit easier, but we can keep an eye on that as we go forward. But I think it's good to have a set date on time so we can get it in our calendars and be ready. But as you see where the conflicts are, if you could let staff know as soon as possible, that'd be helpful as we go through our planning process. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to be meeting Wednesday at 1 o'clock every 3 weeks, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we have successfully addressed our meeting time. That's great. Some things we also have to take a look at is future topics and presentations. Some of the things that we will have coming up before us is how do we approach the work that we have before us? And I think some of the things that is very important is that as we're doing our work is, first of all, getting a good base setting of what is current roles out there, is getting an understanding from each of the different agencies, what they're currently doing. And it doesn't have to be real long, but I don't know if some people have that, can kind of give us a little bit level setting now. But before we get to that, I was also kind of acknowledging that as we go forward is taking a look, as I know that the CAP board has done a bit of work. They've got their comprehensive plan, which I've had a chance to take a look at a little bit here. It has a lot of references to the park in it. I know, if I remember right, there's a design vision for a park. So those, I think, are some things that would be in there. Some of the other things that would be important, I think, that could help guide us as we're trying to figure this out is there are several states that have their capital as a state park elsewhere in the country. And that would probably be a good thing to kind of reference in there to make sure that we are incorporating the process. I think some of the things as we're doing our process going forward is also making sure at some point we have the opportunity for public input. But we're dealing with a park that the people, particularly the people in the area here and elsewhere, are going to have an interest in. So we want to make sure that we're incorporating as much input as possible through the process. So as we're doing that and setting these kind of objectives, what are some of the things that people are seeing that they'd like to be seeing in terms of what we'd like to consider for our upcoming meetings? I know the next meeting will be probably more along the line of hearing what other states have, hearing from the CAP board, what they have seen in that area. So we've got that base, and then we'd be adding on from there. But I'm also want to hear what other people are to help guide this process. So trying to facilitate. Who's Representative Schultz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In addition to what you already mentioned, and you encompass some of our earlier conversation that we had together, I would also add to our discussion that we should consider and hear potentially a presentation from an expert. I'm sure that the CAP board could assist with this, from someone who has studied the work of Cass Gilbert, his design for this building, and the grounds around it, so that we are to be in line with his intentions to the greatest extent possible, and to understand the implications to what a state park would look like along those lines. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Good suggestion. Representative Claiborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it would also be important for us to hear from the public safety aspect of whatever this park would look like. In looking at the membership of the committee, I don't see any mention of security. And I think we want to make sure, especially since the Capitol Mall falls into this weird space of sheriff, capital, city. We need to make sure that there are really clean lines for public safety and making sure that we understand that there's maybe a unified portal for events and things like that to be kind of scheduled.
Okay, very good. Other thoughts? I see Representative Nash over here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And one of the things that is sort of top of mind for me is understanding how would, if this were to happen, would this be different than what other state parks do? And I know that DNR is here and other people are here, but I want to understand the stark differences, any differences that there would be, because I'm sure there will be. But then also, what are the ramifications for the people who may want to come here and take certain activities on the Capitol grounds, because we see a lot of that? And what are the implications for that? I know that's probably to be a topic of conversation, but I wanted to make sure it got on your agenda. And I think I mentioned that the other day when you called Representative Fisher. But also the boundaries. What are the boundaries of this? Because in the Capitol area, it goes further than just the conventional place that we walk around and think of as the Capitol grounds, but there are actually residences that fall inside the Capitol ground. And I want to make sure that if this is to become a reality, that we also listen to the people who are the residents of the area and what their take is on what this may or may not do to them, their home, their ability to do in their home and to their home what they wish, because I know that there are certain restrictions on what one can do inside of a state park. So just wanted to make sure that we put that out there. And lastly for me, well, usually not lastly, I always have something else, as you know, but I want to talk about the money. What does it cost? What will we need to do? What are the interagency budgetary restrictions or problems? And then just wanted to level set for everybody. You know, we're in August of 26 and we're now in a structural deficit. So I just want to make sure we put that on the record right now and put that out there, because we're going to be ostensibly making decisions that have a fiscal component to them when we don't know anything about a funding source of any kind. So I know that's a little bit of a Johnny Raincloud, but Chair Cleavorn comes to expect that of me every day in state government. But it is a reality that we have to address.
No, and Representative Nash, I appreciate you raising that. That's one of the things I know that I've heard from people too, is that whatever we do has got to be sustainable for the future. And that's one of the things that's very important, is making sure that whatever we do doesn't look good today or 2 years from now, but how does it look 15 and 20 years from now, and how does it continue to present itself, fulfilling the vision of not only what we're going to be addressing, but also going back to the roots of what Cass Gilbert had kind of looked at, and then what the residents have. You know, at some point, there's going to also be evolutions of it, and it's making sure that we set it up in a way that we have clearly defined roles, because there, as you were mentioning, there is that the way we manage state parks is probably much different than the way we're going to manage what we would see as a state park here. But there's also some synergies that could be out there that could enhance people. As an example, I'll use the State Park Passport Program. You know, I could see from the state park world, and this is something when I was a kid, I had one of the state park passports. We go around, we get stamped, and you get little trinkets as you do it. Great way to get kids introduced to it that would not see it otherwise. You know, once again, that's a cost. But and I'm sorry, I'm starting to vision a little bit, but I can see where you can get synergies also coming out of the same opportunity. As we've also got downsides, we've got synergies, and I want to make sure that we're doing our best to build off that as we go forward.
And
go ahead,
Mr. Chair, just to
Nash.
conclude, I think one of the things that, as Chair Cleavorn and I have the majority of state agencies in our jurisdiction, agency overlap creates both confusion, problem, additional cost, additional staff, who has the last word, and I will not support something that has a ton of confusion in it, because that just sets it up for failure from day one. So if this is to happen, I think that we need clear lines of delineation as to who moves forward on what, who has the word on whatever. Because coming from the technology world, and even here in our own IT world, nobody forgets a bad launch. And if this is to become reality and it is clunky and confusing from the very beginning, it's going to fail. So from my perspective, if we don't have those answers articulated, I would be against it even moving forward, because there's so many moving parts to state government that we don't want even the hint of confusion if this is to become reality.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Nash. Representative Claiborne, and then I think Mayor Herr's got her hand next.
Oh, sorry. And just to that point, when Co-Chair Nash speaks of boundaries, it's both the physical boundary of what is the park, and then the responsibility and budgetary boundaries that we have to clarify. And I think in thinking about that word boundary, we all are interpreting words every day with our own definition. So we want to make sure as we are going forward in this conversation, you know, when we say state park, we really need to be able to clarify for everyone to understand what that would mean in our final report, right? This park may look differently, but that definition needs to be clear. And when we use words in this committee and in this this working group, I think it's going to be really important that we level set what those words actually mean in practice, because every agency has their own vocabulary. And so I would think it's really important that we stay on that same page. Thank you.
Very good point. Appreciate it. Thank you. Mayor Herr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the discussion. I just want to make sure that maybe at the end of this process that we sort of look at also how, you know, state parks, regional parks, city parks, like what that means, because we also have, you know, like our statutory language within our own city ordinances around parks and adding parkland and things like that. And so there may not be any conflict at all, but I just want to make sure that maybe the city and the state sort of look over where there's overlap in that and how the two interact with each other.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Ms. House.
Hi, thanks, Mr. Chair. One other voice I want to make sure that we're including in this process in some meaningful way is the family. Anything we're putting the Hortman name on, we should ensure that the family is supportive of.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Ms. House. Other comments? Assistant Commissioner Meyer. And then.
Mr. Chairman, I know we spoke about this in kind of along the lines of Representative Nash. There are many rules and regulations for what you can and cannot do within state parks, established in statute and rule. We don't want to be permitting activities on the Capitol grounds, like events and things like that. So I really appreciate hearing that duplicity issue, because I think there's a lot of that potentially. And just the funding piece, I think, is very important, as well as the state parks are in a funding deficit as well. So how do we do these activities that are representative of Speaker Hortman's desires and wishes, represent the family's desires, our desires, and are also long-lasting within a budgetary framework that works within the system. So I know we've had conversations about this in the past, and I think we can end up in a good spot. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Senator Green.
Thank you. And discussion isn't going quite the way I thought it was going to, but I'm glad to hear that there's some caution. I was having some conversations with Senator Hortman earlier today on where we go with this. And one of the things that serving on committees has taught me is that as time goes on, you look at the end result and what you want and stop looking at whether or not it's feasible. And so there may be, when we come to the end of this, it might not be feasible to do here. There's a lot of questions here. And, you know, we brought up the security, the management. I would question about the willingness of the DNR to actually have people to do it here. I mean, whether it's a DNR, whether the state patrol is still going to do it. I mean, it could end up being a nightmare. So I'm looking forward, actually, I don't like committees, but I'm looking forward to hearing some of the input from the agencies and what they think, and also the numbers. I mean, it's a big deal. And if you're going to make these kind of changes, where's that funding source going to come from? We're already pretty limited.
All right. Well, thank you. Other comments? I think this has been a good way to start getting a lot of things out that we'll have to keep in mind as we go forward. It's a discussion I know that we'll have, I think at times will be very lively as we go forward, which is good. This is a planning process, and I think it's going to have some unique ideas, and we may, as we finish, I've got a feeling that what we come out with will actually probably require some different definitions that will end up being in state statute. As you have mentioned, as we're looking at a state park has certain rules, et cetera. This might be what could be called a special use state park with its own segment, which would help address some of those issues. And these are things, which is good that we're bringing up, because these are things that have been kicked around over the last probably year or so that as long as I've been working on this in the last few months, it's different issues that we want to make sure we get it right and making sure that we've got the right caution going forward. So with that, I would say one of the things that would be good is if we could get a little bit of an idea from, we've got most of the agencies here already, if they'd be able to give us, just like a little short presentation of how they currently interact or don't interact with the Capitol grounds here and what they do cover. And I'm not saying, and when I'm saying this is it's, don't take a look at the current legislation we have, but what your current roles are now, because I think that's a good starting point to know what people are currently doing, because that helps guide us as we go forward. And so with that, what I think I'm going to do is probably start on my right and kind of work my way around the table here to the different representatives from the different agencies and organizations and get a little bit of a briefing. So I would like to, if possible, maybe starting off with Ms. House. I know you're over on the administration as general, and you might not have a whole lot, but others agencies may have a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. In the governor's office, we don't have a direct role in managing the Capitol space as far as I'm aware. But, our goal in joining this working group is to help facilitate and make sure that we're able to get to yes on this project. So that is kind of the main goal I have here, but I would turn it over to my colleagues in the agencies and the Historical Society and Cap Board to talk more about what they actually do to run the grounds and the building.
All right, very good. Thank you. Mr. Wentworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Minnesota Historical Society operates the Minnesota State Capitol as one of our 26 state historic sites. And so we are focused on the visitor experience. Many of the legislators will have interacted with school groups and tours here. We do some special programming. Our site manager, Brian Pease, who I know many of you know, is not only a site manager, but almost kind of a state capitol historian, if you will. And so we as an organization have that working knowledge. We're intimately involved in the restoration. We also do provide some administrative support for events here, that kind of thing. When it comes to the exterior, that's not quite as much an area of statutory focus for us. We certainly work closely with the CAP board, but our role is primarily focused inside visitor experience, the history itself, the art in the Capitol. We're obviously involved in that. So. And we actually, I think we're a venue for some of the visioning that was done in terms of the next iteration of the Capitol grounds. So we've served as a venue and provided some input there. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Then coming around, Ms. Held.
I would say admin serves as the landlord for the buildings and parking facilities and the grounds on the Capitol complex. So it's a 140-acre area with 16 buildings and the associated parking facilities on the complex. And within admin, we have our facilities management division. So we manage, maintain, and operate the buildings and the grounds and the parking facilities. So it can include our grounds, the maintenance and upkeep of that. It includes our building engineers, our technical services, so like trades shops, plumbing, carpentry, mechanical automation. We also have our parking and events team, so those are the ones issuing those event permits that happen both inside the Capitol building and on the exterior on the mall and other places on the complex, as well as central mail services. So we provide a mailing service on the complex and to the other state partners within the Twin Cities area. So that is the primary, I guess, high-level role of admin and and how we work with our partners here on various monuments, memorials, additional improvements, I would say, both interior and exterior.
Okay, very good, thank you. Assistant Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, at this time, I'm probably about the most entertainment that people receive from the DNR at the Capitol Complex. We don't have any programming here. We work closely with our partners when activities are needed and things like that. But I think the important thing for us to hone in on in this conversation, or we can do a presentation as well, is how state parks are established. In 86A.05, it defines the Minnesota Outdoor Recreation Act, which was established in 1975, creating our wildlife management areas, aquatic management areas, state parks, state forests. And in there, it talks about what a state park is, and it defines a state park, and it says, state park shall be established to protect and perpetuate extensive areas of the state, possessing those resources which illustrate and exemplify Minnesota's natural phenomena, and to provide the use, enjoyment, and understanding of such resources without impairment for the enjoyment and recreation of future generations. There's also a lot of activities that are permitted, or you need a permit to enter most of these. And the boundaries, if the boundaries were Rice Street, Pennsylvania, some of those residences we would have to exempt from those requirements. I'm assuming we would exempt all people from those requirements. But it will take some use of the words notwithstanding, or creation of a special unit, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman. We have done that in certain cases. Vermilion Highlands Wildlife Management Area is a classic example of how we've taken the wildlife management area system and created a new unit to work closely with the U of M and how their ownership works. So there are ways to deal with these things. We want to work closely with our managing partners on the Capitol Complex to provide the unique experience I think the Capitol Complex has, but do so in a meaningful way and also a fiscally responsible way as well. So I think there are a lot of opportunities here, and we look forward to participating and helping solve creatively those challenges that are in front of us.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dahl.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm Executive Secretary of the CAP Board, and what does the CAP Board do? We were established in 1967, Minnesota State Statute 15B, and really the CAP Board guides the planning, design, and preservation within the Minnesota State Capital Area. For just a little step back of what is the State Capital Area for CAP Board, it's a 60 block surrounding the Minnesota State Capitol, so it goes up to Pennsylvania on the north, to Jackson Street on the east, down into Fitzgerald Park on the south side, and also encompassing the Minnesota History Center, and then over on Marion, it's or over on the west side, it's Marion. And really our main focus is to preserve and enhance the dignity, beauty, and architectural integrity of the Capitol and its grounds, protect and increase open spaces within the Capitol area, develop proper approaches for pedestrians, highways, and mass transit, establish flexible framework for growth consistent with the original design intent of Cass Gilbert and master planners. What do we do in practice is we do design review authority, so any changes to the Capitol area in public, private development proposals, so everything from the Capitol restoration to the former Sears site development. We approve building design, site design, public realm changes. We are the planning authority, so we prepare and implement comp plans, just like the city of St. Paul or other cities in the state. Our latest one is the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. We also oversee the Capitol Mall in conjunction with our partners, Minnesota Historical Society, Department of Administration, City of St. Paul, Capitol Security, and we also oversee planning for the Capitol Mall. So we design, as you mentioned, Chair, we put together a Capitol Mall design framework that planned out, what should the mall look like for Minnesotans over the next 10 to 20 years. We also coordinate land use, zoning, transportation, and public realm standards. And then, as I mentioned, we steward the Capitol Mall. So we protect character-defining features in the Capitol Mall. In the Capitol Mall Historic District, we guide treatment. It's consistent with adopted cultural landscape guidance, and we review proposals for commemorative works. So any additions, modifications, or removals of commemorative works, CAP board reviews those and goes through an extensive process to make the determination how they can be changed, should they be added, should they be removed. The board consists of 12 members, with the chair being the lieutenant governor, 2 appointments from the House, 2 from the Senate, 3 from the mayor's office, and 3 from the governor's office. We meet quarterly. I think that about covers it. Happy to answer any questions if I missed anything.
Okay, very good. Thank you. It's a big part of it, what we're going to be dealing with as we go forward. And then Mayor Herr.
So I think that much is already talked about the relationship between the city and the state. I will just say that, depending on the road or the sidewalks, that we do have shared responsibility in some of those things as well. And so other than that, I don't have the specifics of which roads and which sidewalks, but we can definitely make sure that we have that information for all of you, Mr. Chair. But other than that, I think that we are very much looking forward to being a partner. I know that there are times around the regional parks and some of the other parks that are not specifically city-owned, but we do manage some of these facilities, take care of them. The state funds some of that work for us as well. And so I think that in the spirit of doing something that works for this particular project and really honoring the Hortmans, that the city looks to be a strong partner with the state in order to get this done.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Yes, Representative Claiborne.
Thank you. I just want to clarify my own role on the committee. I am serving in my capacity as co-chair of state government. I do serve on the CAP board, so I do want to make sure that it's very clear that I have 2 hats, but in this particular situation, I will be serving as co-chair of state government.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it was good to hear the overview. I knew Melissa for many, 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 many years. Walked with her lots around here. Had the joy of debating the solar standards bill in 2013 with her and John Marty. It will be in my book, Jim Nash, so it will cone you, it'll be good. But I'll never forget this conversation. Melissa, and this is all she wanted, simple. She said, if we get designated as a state park, I think you might have been in that room, Bob, when she was, maybe not, because, I don't remember things like I used to, but it's coming back. And when it does, look out. So she specifically said, if we get dedicated as a state park, we can finally access funds from outside of Minnesota, outside of government. She started, and she listed, I wish I would have been recording that, but she was listing these other organizations that help, right? And so trees, the discussion with her was trees. It was about the trees. And Eric's shaking his head yes. And so, it would be, I don't know who those entities are. I will look back to see if I could write fast enough, but I didn't. But her intention was to create this park so that we could be self-sustaining, that it would be a beautification of what Minnesota is about, right? And so I think when we start talking about, curbs and gutters and stuff, we're getting down a rabbit hole where we don't need to be. I think we start to, if we do this thing in phases, the conversation is what needs to happen. Are we able to do that? Because I hear Jim Nash. I've heard Jim Nash for many, many years. He and I have one thing in common. We both know the owner of the island in Lake Waconia and ate at one of the best restaurants in the cities. It's in his backyard, Lola's, right? So it's not a plug, Jim, I will get. But I hear that conversation. Steve Green was bringing up, what I like about Steve Green is he will bring up what about? Did you think about this? Have you thought about, right? And we were talking just when you landed from your 5-hour trip down. Thank you for coming to this, by the way. Just that conversation about, this is where you're going. And I'm glad, I was happy to hear you say, look, most of these councils I sit on, but this one I'm looking forward to having those discussions, right? And finding out what can be there. But I just go back to, I'll never forget when she said, this complex should be a state park. Then we could go access funds. from other entities. And I don't know what that means, Eric, and maybe somebody could help us discover what that means. But I'm glad I'm part of this, grateful I'm part of this. And so that's all I wanted to say.
All right, thank you, Senator Hoffman. Other comments or questions that people might have on our initial discussions? Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this follows some of the line of questions or comments from Representative Cleavorn. And with regards to our conversations over these last couple years here at the state capitol, a primary concern being over public safety. And the conversation that I don't feel like we have enough just sitting around the table, maybe even from the authorizing statute, is just that direct input, whether it's from State Patrol, whether it's from the city, or even the county in those roles. And, in this sense, if we were to go the route of a state park, a conservation officer is also a law enforcement officer. And thinking about all of those aspects, we have to be very specific. If this is to work at all, we have to be very specific as to where those jurisdictions lie. And there is concern as not just from the agencies themselves or the departments, but there's concerns from the public as to who am I supposed to reach if there's an emergency, right? And that is something that I really wrestle with on this conversation. It's something that, when we're talking about community safety in the area, it's had its direct impact along University and Rice Street for a long time, that challenge over whose jurisdiction it truly is. And it's something that I believe is going to impact our conversation here. So to the extent to which we're able through presentations and thorough discussion from members of the working group, we need to talk about those things, especially because, and we kind of open this with ensuring that this space that we all appreciate so much is open and accessible to people, right? There are times, as much as I love a state park, no matter the corner of the state, where accessibility isn't necessarily the first thing that I think about. And I want us to be very thorough in the way that we approach that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Schultz. And I believe on Zoom we have Senator Hemmingsen-Yager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question given Speaker Hortman's relationship with our tribal nations, and then given that the land that we're on, do we have a role and space for their input as well?
Thank you for raising it. I think that would be appropriate in here, particularly as we're dealing with some of the work around the outside. I think that would be appropriate that we'd also reach out to that, to the tribal community to make sure that we're incorporating any input that they may have. That's a great observation. And Representative Nash.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I'm just going to pick up on what Representative Schultz just said, but from the Capital Area Security Chair that I have in that commission, there are already 3 law enforcement organizations. There's the State Patrol, there is the County Sheriff, and then there is the City Police. And then to the point that Representative Schultz made, that there would then be probably a DNR or a presence as well if it's a state park. When we've had conversations in Capitol Security, and Captain Roski is here and could add some color if we wanted to, but I think it's a future topic of conversation, the jurisdictional priority or order of priority is something that I think in Cap Security we're still trying to get nailed down. But if we add yet another entity to the mix, that's going to require a tremendous amount of work, because if you'll remember, there were a number of things that happened at the beginning of the biennium in a committee room, and there was a level of confusion that happened between who had law enforcement jurisdiction in that particular instance. That is something that if this is to become reality, we'll have to get nailed down, not just in an agreement, but it will also require probably some statutory definitions if this is to become reality. So I just want to put that on your horizon, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you. Thank you, Representative Nash. That is a good one. And once again, it's one of those things, we don't want to overcomplicate things. It's important that we define things out. And what's great is when it comes out with the recommendations, we get to write what statute's going to be. And I think that's one of the great things that we have as a capability is, as much of us from the elected side here, is being able to take the input and be able to make sure that we have things clearly defined in statute to help resolve these.
Mr. Chair, if I could follow up just briefly.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Thank you,
then,
Mr. Chair. But, you know, as any of us knows, you have to be able to count to 68, 34, and 1. And that's something that is, the law enforcement piece alone, I think, is a huge potential hurdle, because in our underlying statutes and in the creation of this entity, there are responsibilities that are set forth long before what this might be. So something that is to be tackled, but then you got to get votes to pass it if there's underlying statutory changes that are to be proposed. And you know, I'll tell you, as our caucus's whip, sometimes it's tough to get votes on things that you think make sense. And even if there's consensus in one committee, there isn't in the next. So, you know, I think that there's a fair amount of effort that if this is to become reality, that's going to have to be one of the biggest issues, because if a group of people come down here having absolute clarity on who's responsible for what, if there's something that arises, cannot be left to good intentions or conversations had in back rooms.
I saw Commissioner Meyer, and then I'll go over to Assistant Commissioner Meyer, and then over to Representative Claiborne.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Nash, I fully appreciate your comments there. We recognize the enforcement hierarchy that's here, and we fully support them. We do not plan on having a presence if there is a state park here. That would be under the control of the patrol and Capitol Security and everything else. When we are called to do work at this facility, it's for other public safety purposes, and we want to keep it that way. So I think the enforcement pieces are just perfect the way they are. And we're not staffed to have a conservation officer presence in the mall, and we would have to deal with that. But I think things are, as they're dealt with right now, are perfect, and we wouldn't want to change that. So.
Okay, thank you. And then Representative Claiborne, and then after that is Senator Hemmingsen-Yager.
Okay, thank you. I always appreciate a robust conversation, and I think I just want to kind of bring us back to what we're talking about today, right? We're not trying to solve the hurdles today. We're trying to talk about the things that we need to consider. There is so much brain power and knowledge and expertise at this particular table right now that I am completely confident that we can overcome any hurdle if we set our minds to do the good work. So I want to kind of bring us back to what Senator Hortman was talking about and how Leader Stevenson started us off. You know, what is the purpose of the Capitol Mall? How did Melissa and Speaker Emerita Hortman see the mall? Anyone who walked the mall with Melissa, even if it was at 2 o'clock in the morning, just going from the chamber back to the SOB, knew that what she wanted for this space was for the embodiment of Cass Gilbert, that this is the people's front yard. This mall doesn't belong to the legislators. It doesn't belong to admin. It doesn't belong to any agency. It belongs to the people, for the use of the people, to be civically engaged, to promote democracy, to understand our history and why the generations before us felt it so important to build this space and time for people. And I think as we look at how it can be used, there are so many ways that Speaker Emerita Hortman talked about this when we were doing the Capitol Mall design framework, right? Whether it is allowing entertainment space on Dr. Martin Luther King Drive, whether it was creating a classroom from trees for students to come and learn about history. You know, so it is about preserving green space, making it comfortable for a family to come and picnic on the lawn if that's how they wanted to engage. The history Center and CAP Board are working together on apps to give walking tours that people can interact with. I don't see it as any one group having all of the best ideas, but I think collectively, if we focus on how do we make this space more open for the general public, because I agree with you, Representative Schultz, it is about openness, and how maybe we define the Hortman State Park a little differently than how DNR defines, or we have defined it previously in statute. We could have a whole separate chapter in law that defines this particular state park and what the word, quote, state means in that park and how the agencies all interact. I believe that, admin does a great job in event permitting. And so could we have a portal that is used that way? So maybe how IT interacts with this might be a topic that we would talk about too. But for people to be able to come and learn about the different trees that grow and thrive in Minnesota, to learn about the history, to picnic with their family, whatever it may be, I think that, or the other thing in wayfinding we talked about in the capital mall design framework is how do we use wayfinding to also highlight the exceptional people of the state of Minnesota, much like the Scholars Walk that was done at the University of Minnesota. And with the new tribal flag plaza, how do we incorporate the tribal history of the land? And I think it's really a great idea that Senator Hemingston Yeager said to include the tribal nations in this conversation. So anyway, I'll stop talking, but I believe everything is doable when good people come together with a mindset of, here is something that we're talking about. How do we make it a reality? Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Senator Hemingston Yeager is up next.
Thanks again, Mr. Chair. And just totally full agreement with what Co-Chair Cleburne said so beautifully and eloquently. And as I kind of think about this too, we're thinking about, my thinking about this is like we're setting kind of like the vision and like the values of this, but like the pieces of it are going to come in with these other agencies. And so this is kind of my question, maybe more for like the CAP board and like the Historical Society and some of the other agency stuff. Like when you guys are planning the pieces of this, like you have, for example, accessibility for people with disabilities as you're going with these thoughtful processes, yes?
Mr. Dahl, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Senator, yes, that's true. We, in the capital mall design framework, as well as our comp plan, we discussed ADA accessibility, as well as working with Department of Administration to implement those practices in the Historical Society.
All right, thank you. Good. Senator Hemingston Yeager, go ahead.
That's just wanted to double check that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, other comments, thoughts at this point in time? Senator Green? Nope, okay, just wanted to make sure. Yes. All right, no, I'm kind of noticing we're coming up on about an hour here, so I think we've done a pretty good job of hitting a lot of key points right now. I think what we'll be looking at for our next meeting, which we'll be doing 3 weeks from today, is getting a more definition from the CAP Planning Board as to how they cover the area, setting that, getting into the CAP Gilbert design, what he kind of envisioned there, and starting some of those discussions so we get some of that basic education, particularly for those of us that have not been in this world that much. That would be very helpful. If people have other thoughts and ideas that they'd like to make sure, and we've taken the list of what we had earlier too, but if you have some thoughts that we'd like to get queued up earlier versus later, please let me know. And if there's no more comments that I am seeing here, I will declare us adjourned. Thank you all.